first speaker is going to be Mingus Mapps. Welcome, Mingus.
Here we go. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks to everyone who organized tonight's event. This is a very important discussion at a very timely time. So I really appreciate the fact that everyone took some time out of their day to come together to have this exchange of ideas. I have a question about formats. I think there are some questions here. Should I go through the questions or should I just generally talk?
Mingus, just talk. And then you have about 15 minutes for open talk. All three of you will speak, and then we're going to get to the questions, okay?
Okay, that sounds perfect. Thank you. And I apologize.
You don't have to talk for the whole 15.
Yeah, I probably won't talk for the first 15 minutes, but one of the things I do want to do is just as a Portlander and a neighbor and a friend, I want to express my appreciation for coming out, everyone coming out and participating in this important discussion about how race works in Portland. You know, as an African American and the dad of 2 Black children, this is an issue that matters a lot to me. And I know it's funny that we can live our lives next to each other and in many ways not know that much about each other or know, especially around racial issues. Our experiences can be fundamentally different. And I can just speak for myself. I can't tell you. I think everyone has a unique journey in Portland. I have some good news about my journey in Portland. You know, I have been in Portland in and out since the 1970s. I have seen this town evolve. We have never been particularly diverse, although I also think that Portland doesn't get enough credit for how diverse it is. I think I've always experienced the town as being containing more and more different kinds of people than it typically gets credit for. And Portland certainly deserves to get credit for its commitment to issues surrounding racial equality. You know, the fact that I've had the sort of life journey that I've had in Portland is a sign that you can be an African American and be very much embraced by your city. But, you know, even today, you know, there are some sad things. You know, race and racism continues to very much shape my experience in Portland and probably everyone's, every person of color's experience in Portland. I'll tell you one of the ways in which I experience this most acutely comes to the context of my kids and their relationships at school. Sadly, it is, I certainly probably have to go into the principal's office. You know, with 2 kids, it can be with 2 kids in elementary school and now middle school. I can be in the principal's office. You know, probably as often as once a month to work through some sort of racist incident. Often it's an issue surrounding name calling on the school grounds, which is particularly painful because, you know, we've been in this neighborhood for about 10 years. We know all these kids. These are good kids. These are the kids that we grew up with. But still, kids are sponges who take in the larger culture that we all live in. When I am in that situation, one of the things I try to do is, you know, bring families together to talk about why that behavior hurts. I want the kids involved to understand sort of both that we still love him and him or her, but at the same time, understand why and how that's painful. I hope that when we engage in conversations like that, it opens people up as opposed to causing them to pull apart. But it is difficult. And I will tell you, I've been very lucky in Portland, but I've also seen acts of racism in this town, which would curl your hair or curl my hair if I still had some hair to curl. So like even in the course of the past year, I've had Black friends who've had their neighbors call the police on them, very much with the intent and hope, I think, that the police would impose violence on them. And these are like professional African-American people who spend their days dedicated to trying to make a better Portland. I'm sure you would know, everyone in this room would know some of the people I'm talking about. And that's hard. A good news is, and I'm thinking about a specific incident when the police arrived in that one, they saw exactly what was going on and were very kind and constructive to my friend in that situation. And then we also had the larger discussion of policing here in Portland. And that, especially as an African American man, is a complex issue. And it's interesting. It's a little bit like, I hate to put it this way, it's a little bit like, it's always going to your own funeral. A lot of our current discussions are about how you go about policing African American men, and only about 2.5% of Portlanders are African American men. I've actually done the math. You could literally put all of us in the Moda Center, and we could all have seats. There are only about 70,000 African American men in this city, so it's interesting to have the entire discussion and this entire moment be about my relationship to the state and the state's relationship to me. I'll tell you something, I haven't shared this with a lot of people, but if you look like me and you grow up in a place like Portland, you're going to attract a lot of attention. And I have always attracted a lot of attention. I have never had the option to walk into a room in Portland and be anonymous ever since I was a little kid. And if you're a Black person growing up, especially if you go back a couple of decades, if you were a young Black person growing up in Portland, you would be over-policed. And I think you have two options to do when you're over-policed. You probably have three options. When the police kind of come to pull you over, you can run, but I'm not a runner. You can get pulled over and have that unfair interaction with a person of authority and be very angry and be very alienated from your government and from the police. And I understand that. And then there's another option, and this is the camp that I'm in, and I'm not saying this is right or this is wrong, this is just how I'm built. When I have been over-policed, one of my instincts is to actually lean into that moment. Try to engage with the police officer and whatever systems that are kind of interested in me and learning more about it. So, when have been pulled over, one of the things I typically kind of go is, yeah, I want to go downtown. Let's go see what you are doing and why you are doing it. And I think if you kind of have an open heart there, actually it can kind of work. It has worked for me, and that kind of explains a lot about who I am, is I'm going downtown. And through that, through doing a lot of time going downtown, I've gotten to see a lot of great public servants. I also understand the sort of difficult circumstances that they work in. That's why I think getting the sort of policies and values around policing right really matters. We really have to reaffirm our commitment as a community to have a racism-free approach to policing. I think that we also need to recognize the impact of the historical impact of racism. There's a great economic divide in our city, and it is deeply tied to opportunities that happen here. It's only been in relatively recent years, for example, that people who look like me had access to labor unions or higher education. I'll tell you why actually I am in Oregon today is because about 52 years ago, Martin Luther King was killed. And that was a tense moment in American history. And one of the responses to that moment is Reed College decided to implement a rigorous affirmative action program. So my aunts and uncles who lived down in the Bay Area somehow heard about an opportunity to go to a school up in Portland, Oregon, called Reed College. They started to go. I had an uncle who went to Reed College in the late 1960s, directly as a product of Reed's effort to do something different in relationship to the King assassination. And then I had another aunt go, and then another aunt go, and then I'm here. And then I made my life, my career in this city. I have not forgotten, frankly, how I got here. And I feel some obligation to make sure that other people who look like me can find the same opportunity in Portland that I have. I think it's a lifelong process. You know, you never the march towards justice is uneven, and sometimes it contains bends and curves. But I think if you stay true to it and remember why you're here, and remember that we're all people who I think love our city and love our kids and love our neighbors and our neighborhoods, we will be okay. And I think that that is the work that I've been put here in Portland to do. And it's been a real pleasure over the course of my life and my career to work with so many of you. Thank you. And thank you for tuning into this important conversation.
Thank you, Mingus. We have a series of questions, but I'm going to wait until all three of you have spoken, and then I'll ask the questions. By the way, for the audience to know, these are all questions that you have sent in. Because there's so many of you, it just isn't feasible to have you ask the questions yourselves. So you've sent them in. I'm going to pose it. And for you three speakers, when I pose a question, if you just raise your hand, I'll know you're interested in answering, and then I'll call you in turn. So our next speaker is Martha. Martha, you're on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mingus. Thank you so much. I just hope that you guys don't mind that I refer my paper who's with me, because I'm not a public speaker. This is probably my first time speaking to many people like this, and I prefer to speak in person because I miss that hugging. That is the way how I communicate. I miss that part. I thank you so much for this opportunity. And my name is Martha Jembere, and I hope and pray that you guys all and your family members are doing well in these challenging times with the COVID, with the firework and all these things going on. And I hope you all staying healthy. And first, I really would like to express my gratitude to our panel organizer and moderator, Melanie. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come together to speak and to solve problems together, because this is a teamwork. It's not a one person or a one race problem. It's all of us to come together. So I'm very excited. I'm nervous, but I'm very excited to be here with you all today. And thank you for allowing me to share with you guys how it feels like to live in Portland as a Black woman, as a mother, as a friend, as a wife, as a friend, as a healthcare professional, as stay-at-home mother, as a community builder, as a community organizer, as a dreamer, and as a doer. You know, I try to do all I can try to do. And I thank you all so much for being here today. You are here because you care. You are here because you love your community. You are here because you believe in the power of unity, because you believe in teamwork. You believe in all those things. So you believe in the power of being genuine and compassion. That's why you are here. You are not here because you are the problem. You are not the problem. There is no a problem maker here. There is a problem, but we are here to solve that problem. We are here because there is a power, that is a kindness in each one of us. So we can communicate. What we need is communication. What we don't have is communication. That is what we lack. We can't solve problems. And I feel like we all have responsibility to do that. So that's why we are here today. I thank you so much. And today I also would like to thank you so much for my fellow panelists, Kevin, and also Kevin and Mingus. I never met before, but I just first time, and nice to meet you guys. I hope to meet in person, all of you guys. And so I'm so grateful to be here, even though it's virtual. I hope we meet again in person. But to go back to my story, I just want to know that I live with my husband and with two of my sons. One is 12-year-old and one is 16-year-old. He's in high school. And so we live in Portland for the last 25 years. I've been here in downtown Portland for the last 25 years. It's been a long time. So I divided my story in two parts. I have a reason why I divided my story in two parts. That is the life I had before I was labeled by skin color. I had life before I was labeled by skin color. And then the other part is a part of me that I start living after I was labeled by skin color as a Black woman. So I thank you so much again. And then, so originally I am from Ethiopia. From maybe most of you guys heard about Ethiopia. It's the eastern part of Africa. And so before I came here, I lived there. It is the capital city of Ethiopia is called Addis Ababa. And I lived with my father and my mother. And before I talked to you guys about myself, I want you to have a little bit about, for you to know who my parents were, because it's important. It makes me who I am. And my parents both graduated from college. They are professionals. My father went to Ohio State University. He earned his degree here in education. And after that, he went back home because the reason he went back home, because he felt like that he owed his people. He said that the people sent him so he can learn, he can go to school without having shoes, without eating food. So he has to repay, so he had went home. And when he went home, he got a job. He worked as a minister of education. And he, assistant minister of education, and he was able to travel around the world representing Ethiopia. And he represent Ethiopia in UNESCO World Conference on Education. And he also served as a Senate of university at one of the major university in Ethiopia for 35 years. And then my mother, on the other hand, she graduated from the college, and she was a teacher, she was a school principal, she was a supervisor, she was a librarian, and she had little time, but whenever she had little time, she was a community organizer. She was always there to build a community, to solve problems. She was always there. Wherever there is people, she's there always to solve problems. That is who my mom was. So this gives you a little bit where I come from, so where I start. And so now you have some ideas. I want to go back and tell you how I start my life. And when I was in college, in high school, after I graduated from high school, I went to college 1 year, and then things changed. We had a military coup, and there were demonstrations, there were people dying, there was a regime change. So somehow my father ended up in prison as a political prisoner because he worked for the previous regime, you know, the Haile Selassie, the king regime. So he ended up in a prison. So it was such a hard situation for my family, for myself. So all people want their children to leave the country. So I had no choice, so I had to leave the country to be safe. I went to Russia at the age of 19. And though I studied the language, and I started going to study pharmacy for 2 years and so, but I didn't want to stay there because I wasn't able to practice my faith. The faith was a big thing in my family, but there was no church. Church worship was not allowed. So it was very hard. So I decided I couldn't stay there. I couldn't go home. I couldn't do nothing. So I just decided to leave Russia and to go to West Germany. I took a train, and while I was on the train, I tried to come up with a plan, where should I go? And so right after I arrived in Germany, I decided to go to American embassy. I had choice. I had to go either to Canada to stay in Germany or to come to United States. I chose to come to United States because of the influence I had from my father. My father had a big respect for United States because he said, always, relatively speaking, United States is always a better place to be. Yes, there are things to be worked, but there are great people there. I always remember what he said. And so That is why I made a decision to come to United States. And I waited for 2 years to be in a refugee camp. I lived in a refugee camp in Germany for 2 years. That was a life-changing experience. I learned to be patient. I learned to accept others regardless of who they are. I learned to communicate with people without even knowing what language they speak. You know, smile is enough. You smile, that is language, that is enough. And that is what I learned. I learned humility. I learned caring. I learned compassion. I couldn't change that for anything. I feel like I was blessed to have that experience. I learned that we all are one, regardless of our physical appearances, you know, to begin with. So after waiting for 2 years, I finally got a sponsor here in Portland, Oregon. That's why I came to Portland, Oregon. I was sponsored by kind family here, and so I came to United States. And so my life here began there. That's the second part of my life. That is when I started classified by skin color. Before that, I never heard of you know, that kind of classification. You know, while I traveled and studied in Ethiopia, Africa, in Russia, in Germany, different parts of there, I never, I filled out so many forms for different purpose, but no one asked me to define myself by skin color. That was a new thing for me, for the first time to fill out form by my skin color, because I am originally from Ethiopia, and most of you might know that Ethiopia is the only African country never been colonized. So I don't know what to mean to be classified by skin color. It was foreign concept to me. So that was shocking. So that's why I said I have two parts of my life, before being classified as a Black person and after. And so once I arrived here to United States, I was very fortunate. I fell in love with the United States just the time I arrived here in Portland, Oregon. You know, people said that, you know, predominantly it's a white state, but I sensed a mental diversity. I sensed a mental diversity. That is the reason I stayed here. You know, we none of us have a choice to be who we look like, the outer appearance, but we have the responsibility, we have a choice to make who we are inside, our attitude. I focused on that because of my faith. God creates you and God creates me. God creates all of us. That is, we are responsible for our attitude. And I felt that they said, keep Portland weird in a good way. And I love that. I want to be even more good. And we all have a responsibility to make Portland even better. So once I arrived here, now I focus how I experience racism while I'm here. Yes, there is racism. There is no question about that. Because I tell you the truth, the reason is because not to make you feel uncomfortable, because I believe the only way we find a solution is by telling the truth. If I hide the truth, there is no true solution. And so if we want to solution, we have to know the truth. We have to tell the truth. And so I experienced racism. I had to work more. I had to work hard. And I had to work against stereotype that comes with skin color. And so that was not easy. I think I'm passing my time limit, right, Melanie? I'm so sorry. Is that okay to continue?
Continue, maybe 5 more minutes?
5 more minutes, okay, I'm so sorry. But once I started here, and then I worked so hard, I started working as a certified nursing assistant. In a week I focused there. And while I go to nursing home, I went to, school to go back to my career, and I went full-time school. And I think one of my mentor was, you probably guys heard of him. His name is Mulugeta Serao. I don't know if you guys know of him. Probably some of you guys know. He's from Ethiopia, and he was one of my, I would say, my mentor, because we are few Ethiopian community. I got his advice and I followed, and I went to accepted by the College of Pharmacy in Oregon and Corvallis, and I went there. And one of the things, I don't have enough time, I have to make it shorter, one of the experience when I was in Corvallis, while I was studied so hard. One day, when I was, after I studied so hard and it was nighttime, like 2 o'clock in the morning with my friend, she's my Chinese friend, and we start walking, going to our dorm. When we walked, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, the whole light on the street went dark. And at that point, we both started shaking. We were scared. We don't know what to do. The next thing we know, we just start walking fast, and I turned around. I saw 3 figures. I saw 3 people wearing the KKK hood, and up to all the way to the bottom, hanging the ropes, following so close, telling us to stop where you are. They followed us, and we were shaken. And we start running. I told her, because I couldn't leave her there. I didn't know how her reaction would be. I have to save both of us. I ran all my life. I know I used to run, but I don't know how she would react. I have to drag her. She had to keep up. I told her to run. So there was an open store, convenience store. We jumped there. When we jumped there, there was no one. There was no one in the counter. We start yelling, help, help, help. No one was there, no one. So we jumped out, praying, hoping. And then when we start crying, they were so close. We start running again. At that moment, I was praying to say the last word to these people. I was praying, even though they're going to kill me. I was gonna say one word before they kill me. I was telling them why they hate me. That was the last word I prepared while I was running. Why they hate me? Why they do that? I ran. We ran so fast. I was bragging her. We ran. We made it to our dorm. We opened the door. We got into our room. She didn't see until that point. Once we get in the building, it was locked. There was a French window. I showed her through what we were running from. She was shaking, both of us. And so the next day, I couldn't sit for the exam. I went to take the exam, I was blank. I got the paper here, I couldn't see a question. I seen those 3 figures. I see the ropes hanging. I hear the voice, stop there. That changed my life. That changed my life. I never thought in my life that people hate you just the way you look like. That changed my life, not in a way to hate others. It changed me. That things has to be changed. That's how it changed. That's how it changed me. And so I stopped there. And so this is what I experienced. And there are other things that I experienced. I could go more. But then regardless of what experience I had, I always want you guys to know there are many people in Portland that changed my life for a good reason that we cannot categorize. But things has to be changed. We cannot deny. There is no reason why we have a 2.5% of African Americans in Portland, Oregon. That number has to be changed. That's not right. So I'm here today to appeal to you. We gotta take action. I'm tired of speaking. I'm here to speak, but I'm tired of speaking. I'm tired of complaining. I'm not a complainer. I want to fix things. I want to appeal to you because I have a plan. Help me with my plan. I appeal to you. I love Portland beyond words. I believe you guys. I love each one of you. I have a reason why I live in Portland, downtown Portland, because I believe that we all are one team. This is a teamwork. We have to change. So thank you so much for hearing. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Martha, thank you for your courage, for your honesty. Most of all, thank you for your willingness to give people a second chance. That's a very brave act. I hope to hear more about your plan when we get to the question. We're now going to hear from Kay Ray.
Hold on just a second. Of course, my phone decided the battery go dead and start to squeak right then. Thank you, Melanie. Martha, that was incredible. Thank you. I'm going to take a whole different tact than the other two people have taken, and I'm going to walk you through chronologically my life as not just a Black man, but as a Black person in these United States. I'm going to try my best to do it in 15 minutes. And Melanie, if I don't, please cut me off whenever. But I think it's important for people to understand what it means when people say Black Lives Matter. And I just want you, everyone that's here, all 80 of you, to hear chronologically the things that a 62-year-old man here in these United States has had to deal with, and why he can still sit here in a panel like this and say that Portland is the best place he's ever lived in his life, and he's lived all over the United States and has traveled the globe. I was very fortunate to be raised by the world's greatest parents who taught my sister and my brothers and I that as long as we treated others the way we expected to be treated, that everything would be okay. And sometimes it was very, very hard. But I think all of us as a family did that, and we've all been blessed with wonderful lives. So I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to talk relatively quickly because I want to get through most of the things that I have to say. I was born in 1958 in a very small town in Ohio. And our town probably at that time had maybe 7,000 people. I was born on the wrong side of the tracks, as they say. Our population at that time was probably, maybe even conservatively, 98% white. It was a Midwestern farm town, yet it was also an industrial center. We were about 3 hours below Detroit, so there were a number of automotive factories in our town that we made parts for cars. We would ship them up to Detroit. And then the other side of the town was basically farming. My father worked in one of the factories for 40 years and retired there. I think most of us at some point or another in our lives worked in one of those factories. I'm going to say a couple of things that are going to make people uncomfortable, but it's just, this is my story. And so I want people to hear it the way I heard it. I was called nigger for the first time in the 4th grade on the playground playing tetherball. The teacher's reaction was, it's not that big of a deal. He probably didn't mean it. In the 8th grade, going to middle school, most of the people, there were so few Black people in our town that almost all of us were related at that time, to be honest with you. It was odd that we weren't relatives. But in the 8th grade, and that was, I believe, we were celebrating Martin Luther King, and we wanted to have an assembly in our middle school, and they wouldn't allow us to have that. We were told that it wasn't necessary, there wasn't a reason for it. And one day we heard from the high school kids, the older kids that we all looked up to, that they were going to have an assembly, whether the school allowed them to have it or not. And what these older Black kids were going to do was, they were going to walk from that high school to the middle school. We were all going to leave school at lunch, and they were going to walk us 1.5 miles across our town to their assembly. We were not to tell our parents because it would terrify our parents, but we did it. High schoolers showed up. They took us out of school. We walked 1.5 miles to the high school. In that 1.5 miles, we sang "We Shall Overcome" about 100 times, all the way through our town. In 1972, I entered high school as a freshman. I ran for class president. I won. I ended up being class president 3 out of the 4 years of my high school years. Freshman, sophomore, and a senior. During those times in 1972 and 1976, our school celebrated slave days. And by that, I mean, what they did was they would pick 20 or 25 kids, and you would dress up like slaves with cut up jeans and ripped up shirts, and You would put a rope around your neck or some kind of shackle on your ankle. And then there would be an assembly, and all the kids in the school could bid on you. Now, it wasn't just black kids, but it was slave days, and it was celebrated. And you bought a person, and for the next week, that person was your slave. They carried your books, they carried your tray at lunch. They basically did whatever you wanted them to do. As a 16-year-old, I also got my driver's license in this little farm town. And I'm sure some of you have heard this. You've either seen it on television or you've heard it. But my father had the talk with me. And the talk was the most important talk that your father would have with you as a black man. And that was, this license is a dangerous thing to have. And if you ever see the lights behind you of a policeman, you immediately pull over and you immediately put your hands on the steering wheel, and you don't remove those hands from the steering wheel, and you do not look that policeman in the eye, and you look straight ahead, and you call him sir. And you call him sir 100 times if you have to, but that's what you call him. I remember many times in high school being told, well, you don't act black. You don't talk black. I remember many times in high school being asked, can I touch your hair? In my junior year, I was fortunate enough to go to Vermont with a little club in school, a little outdoor club, and we went to Vermont to do a little bit of Appalachian Trail. We got to Vermont the first night. It was raining very hard. We didn't get to the trail. We camped beside a river. In the middle of the night that night, we were with two adults, a man and a wife. In the middle of the night that night, we were awakened, and the man said, we need to get out of our tents. We've got to get out of here. And I said, why is that? And I was the only black there. There were about 5 of us, and I was the only black kid there. And he said, something's happening down the river, and we have to get out of here. And it ended up that was my first experience in 1975, I think it was, or 4, that it was a Klan rally in the middle of the night in Vermont, and I witnessed a cross burning, and it was only about a quarter of a mile from where we were camped, and unfortunately, they didn't see us. In 1976, as a class president, what our school did was the class president escorted the homecoming queen. He put the crown on her head, and he also gave her a kiss on the cheek. The homecoming queen was very blonde. I was very black. There were rumors all week that I was going to be beat up. My parents received letters that their son better not kiss that white girl. My dad talked to me before the game and said, you better not kiss her, because if you do, there's going to be a problem in this town. We got to the game, I escorted her, and she said to me, you know, you can't kiss me. And I didn't, simply because of the color of my skin. In 1970, our parents took us to Atlanta, Georgia to visit our cousin. Martin Luther King had obviously been assassinated a couple years before that. One of the big deals of that trip were we were going to go to his grave. And we went to his gravesite. It was incredible. I still remember it. I remember seeing my dad cry as he stood there. We left the gravesite. We spent some time with my aunt. We were driving home. We were somewhere between Atlanta, Georgia, and Ohio, which is about 600 miles. We stopped at a Cracker Barrel to have dinner. The Cracker Barrel was about half empty. They told us we'd have to wait for a seat. They never seated us. They embarrassed my father, and we had to leave. And my dad stopped at a gas station, and we had candy bars because we couldn't eat at that restaurant because we were black. Skip way ahead till my professional life. And I moved from Ohio to Michigan. I was in footwear for most of my career. I moved from Ohio to Michigan. I moved from Michigan to Portland in the early 90s. I then moved to Boston. I took a job in Boston, and I decided I would stay there, so I was going to buy a house. I couldn't find a real estate agent that was willing to show a black person a house in white neighborhoods on the North Shore. It was so bad that the company that I worked for had been using this real estate agency for 30 plus years. And when the CEO asked me why I had yet to buy a house, I fumbled through an answer because I just couldn't tell him why. And when he demanded that I tell him, I told him, and the next morning he fired that agency that had been the agency of record for 30 years. That brings me to Portland probably 20 years ago or so, and back in the footwear business and coming back to a place that I absolutely loved and had always had a good experience with. And I was fortunate enough that a number of years ago I met a wonderful woman, I got married, and we lived in Banks for a while, and then we moved kind of just past St. Thomas More, down Patton on Westdale. And then we moved to kind of this side of the hump, I call it, right over on the other side of St. Thomas More. We lived just off of Montgomery. And it wasn't too long after we moved here that I was riding my bike, as Melanie said, I'm a very serious cyclist. I was riding my bike up Montgomery with a friend of mine. And he had turned off to go to his home, and I was just a block away from him. I was solo coming up Montgomery. And I was just riding up. I was on the far side of the road, and I heard a car come around one of the sharp corners. And I looked up, and the person was in a Range Rover looking down at their phone, and they were in my lane. And they were coming down Montgomery. And they just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And all of a sudden, the guy looked up, and I had already headed to the curb, and he looked up, and he turned his wheel, and he went over, and he parked in front of one of the houses on Montgomery. And I was terrified, and I said, "You've got to be more careful." And he looked at me and he said, "You don't belong in this neighborhood anyway, nigger. Why are you riding your bike on my street?" Now, I live to this day about 2.5 blocks from that man, and he wondered why I was in his neighborhood. Last summer, I was having a problem sleeping. One night I couldn't sleep. I got up, it was about 11:30. I decided to take the dog for a walk just because it was a warm night. I put my dog on a leash and I'm walking down Vista. I notice up in front of me there's a car parked and there's a bicycle on it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This bike is going to be stolen. As I get up to the car, I notice that not only is the bike on the car, it's unlocked on a bike rack. It's a very expensive bicycle, $5,000 bicycle. I walk past the house I'm thinking that it belongs to. I walk to the end of the block telling myself, I can't knock on this door. I'm a black man in Portland, Oregon on Vista. I can't knock on this door at 11:30 at night. I go to the end of the block and it bothers me so much. I walk back past the house. I walk past this house 3 times wanting to knock on the door and say, hey, your bike is on your car is unlocked. But I just couldn't do it because I fully expected the police to be called on me. The 1st of June of this past year, to move along, the 1st of June this past year, between the 1st of June and the middle of July, here in the city of Portland, Oregon, I was called nigger 4 times in 6 weeks through no provocation of my own. One was in a Fred Meyer, standing in line. One was riding my bicycle outside of Portland on the west side of Portland by myself coming down the road, and I see a pickup truck coming towards me who slows down, and I wonder why he slows down. And when I got up to him, he flips me a bird and he says, "Get off the road, nigger," to me. This is what I've experienced as a black man from the 4th grade being called that for the first time as a 4th grader to being a 62-year-old man in 2020, still being called that same thing. As Martha said, I love Portland, Oregon, and this is not a Portland problem. This is a problem. But it's the reason why I can say that I need my life, I need the life of Martha, I need the life of Mingus, I need the life of everyone that looks like us to matter. Because it's very hard and it's very easy when I'm on a bike ride for somebody to yell at me, hey, get off the road. But rarely does it stop at that. It's, hey, get off the road, nigger. So I cannot thank Melanie, Nancy Seaton, the whole Swirl crew for putting this on. This is an important moment for our community, for our area. I hope it's not the only time we do this. I'm sure I talked over my time, Melanie. I apologize. But I really appreciate you folks being here and signing up to listen to what we have to say. I love this city. This is a great city. It's my favorite city in the United States of America. I'm proud to raise my daughter here and our kids. But we can all do better. We can all do better. Thank you.
Okay, people, we're going to move to questions, but before we do, feel free to unmute yourselves and applaud.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
That was my brother.
Amen.
We have been honored to hear your stories, but we also have some questions for you because as you pointed out so well, Kay Ray, a lot of people simply don't understand. They don't understand what's going on and they don't understand how to deal with it. So I'm going to start with my first question, and it's a little bit hard for me to see your pictures. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask the question and then I'll say your name. I'll say like Mingus, Kay Ray, Martha, and if you want to answer, just answer. If you don't, you can say pass and I'll move to the next person, okay? So our first question, why don't we start with you, Kevin? How can we make our neighborhood more inviting to families of color?
That of all the questions, I think that's the toughest question. But it has an easy answer, but it's a hard question to hear asked. Because all you have to do is, if a white couple and family move in beside you, and then a black couple moves in on the other side of you, there is no reason to treat either of those families any differently than the other family. That black family is not special. It is not special. And people need to understand, I am not special, Mingus isn't special, Martha's not special. We're not special people. We're just people. We're just people. So if you really want to make your neighborhood inviting to people, learn to treat those that are around you in your everyday life. When you go to a store and you're dealing with a clerk or there's a waitress or whatever it is, just learn to treat everyone the way you expect to be treated. If you pick up your life right now and you move to Denver from Portland, how do you want to be treated? How do you want to be treated? It's really simpler than people make it out to be. We have to be a welcoming community. Right now, we see in our neighborhood, we see a lot of BLM signs in neighborhoods, in front yards. But you know what? I think there's some black people being replaced by signs. It's easy to put a sign in your yard. Let me just tell you, it's very easy to put a BLM sign in your yard right now. But the question is, what happens if a black family actually says, oh, this is a welcoming community. I want to live in Portland Heights. I'm going to move in right beside that house. Would you still welcome them like you put that sign in your yard and profess to believe that Black Lives Matter? And this is not a condemnation on anybody that has a sign in their yard. Because every time I walk past one of those houses that have a sign, if you're in your yard, you have heard me say to you, thank you for your sign. Because that sign means the world to me. I'm sure it means a lot to Martha. I'm sure it means a lot to Mingus. But the point is, when you're asking a question like, what can we do to welcome people in the community, into your community? Well, if you're going to have a Black Lives Matter sign in your yard, then guess what? It shouldn't really matter that I live beside you. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. And I have to tell you, here at SWIRL, we're a little bit proud of ourselves, if we are allowed to be, because back at the beginning, when a lot of people were saying we should put a statement up about Black Lives Matter, we said, no, we should ask one of our Black residents to put a statement up about his own life. So that was
And I
you.
appreciated that. Thank you very
And
much.
it was wonderful. Mingus or Martha, do either of you have something you want to add to what Kevin just said on that?
Mingus, you can go.
Sure. I just want to, well, number one, thank Kevin for his powerful remarks. The same with Martha too. I think I want to underscore the things that Kevin said about how to welcome people of color to your neighborhood, and the way to do that is to just welcome people to your neighborhood.
Mhm.
I think this is good advice both to for outreach to people who don't look like you, and I think it's also good advice for outreach to people who do look like you. You know, I think one of the things I've learned over the course of my time in Portland is that it's the connections that exist amongst neighbors, which is kind of where a lot of our strength comes from. And I know, especially in this modern age, it's really easy to be isolated and to live inside your house, and to live a life that's mediated through a computer so that your personal connections happen all over the globe. But I think local really does matter. And it doesn't have to be rocket science. I'm just connecting with someone as a human being is the greatest act of kindness.
Mingus, let me stick with you for a minute. And Martha, I want to come back to you for the third question. Mingus, this one is right down your alley.
Sure.
What should neighborhood associations do? And I know that you were in charge of that, so you're the expert here, to involve residents of color in the association. For example, coming to meetings, leadership roles, advocacy, and other actions.
Sure. Well, one of the things I've learned is that if you want to get someone involved, like the best way to do it is to reach out and say, hey, would you please come to a meeting? And when people do come to your meetings, then, you know, invite them to take a leadership role. So I think that act, although it seems very simple, it's often an easy one to miss. So I encourage people to do that. Also in the context of neighborhood associations, I've always been very excited about cross-fertilizing the energy and ideas we see in neighborhood associations with the other groups that we have in community. Sometimes we pit neighborhood associations against new immigrant groups or, you know, whatnot. And I think that's always been a terrible mistake. But I think it would be a great idea to invite, you know, the Hispanic-oriented church down the corner to one of your neighborhood association meetings, or to kind of send a delegation from the neighborhood association to the church, to the fellowship society, to whatever it is. Even just, you know, I think personal connections are incredibly important, but even reaching out to try to develop some of those formal institutional relationships, I think can make a huge difference too.
Mingus, some people have said, and it comes up in later questions, but given what you said, I want to follow up with that.
Sure.
They show a fear that if they, for example, single out a Black neighbor, will you join our association, that they're putting a burden on this person that they wouldn't necessarily put on a white neighbor, and that makes them feel maybe uncomfortable. How would you respond to that?
Ask anyway. You know, I think being invited to participate in the life of your city is an honor and an obligation. You know, I discourage you from being shy to ask. I mean, that's how all of us who have sat on a committee before, that's how it happened. Someone asked us to go to a meeting, or we saw something we really cared about and started going, and just never left. So don't worry about that. But also let it be okay to say, for that person to say, I can't do it. I just got 2 kids and we're teaching at home, and it's just more than we can do now. But
I guess it's more than any of us can do right now.
And so it's true, which is also a reason to reach out, you know, because it literally has gotten much harder doing everything through Zoom with the smoke and the no school and whatnot. One of the only ways we can survive this as a community is to reach out and ask for help from each other. And the more different kinds of people you ask for help from, the more robust and resilient we will be as a community.
I love the way that you say invite, ask. So you're not forcing anyone, you're inviting them. I think that's lovely. Martha, I want to turn to you now. what is the best way to open a conversation on race and racism with someone of a different race? The person who wrote that said, I'm unlikely to say anything for fear of saying the wrong thing, but I'm keen to listen and learn. How would you recommend people cross that barrier? Martha?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Melanie. Thank you for the question. And all of the questions are so kind and so genuine. I just like all the questions there. And so I think I would say that from my life experience, the way I see is communication is like to be genuine. We shouldn't worry about what the other people think about. We should worry about the genuinity. As long as it is genuine, and as long as it is, comes with action, we don't have to worry about that. Maybe the kindness, just the words are empty, but we have to make it with action, because people doubt the talk, people doubt the words, but people cannot doubt the action, because the action is there. Show it in action. No one can doubt the action. I think it's all action. Talk is enough. We've been talking this for the last 201 years. It's just time to stop talking and to take action. That's what I would say.
Martha, let's follow up on that, because we have a question about that. And I want to hear what kind of actions you think are important to take and what actions you've been working toward.
So I've been taking action single-handedly because I have children. And when you have children, you have the obligation to teach them what's right and what's wrong. But that is not enough, because we don't live in a vacuum. We all are connected. You have to involve all of us. And so I come up with the idea, just like I made a poster, and I asked her to go to school, teaching them what about Africa, about where I come from. Because schools don't teach about that, unfortunately. So I have to teach kids, younger kids, like second grades, at the beginning, because I believe change comes from bottom up, not from up bottom. It has to come from bottom. We have to educate our kids. And most of the thing what we see right now is because people are not taught right. People are, hatred is taught. Love is taught. We have to educate our kids. And so I focus on the children. And one of the things it touched my heart is when I took a poster, and every time I took a poster, I take food. I cook food for school. I take food and the poster I carried on my bus. I take buses everywhere. And I just taught them what it is. And they write me later. I have to share that, the letters I got next time. The thing that said to me was, I didn't know that. No one taught me that. I didn't know that. I cried when I saw that. I cried. That is wrong. That is wrong. These kids touch my heart. And so I come up with the idea to start a club, whatever you call it, or small organization, say that, how would they know? That is the name of the community center I would like to work on. How would they know? If we don't teach them, how would they know? How would they know? I feel like I have responsibility to teach love. I taught my kids, but I have enough love to share with other kids. Minga's kids, and also Kevin kids, we have kids. We have to protect our children too. We have love. We don't see our color. We have to see through what we have inside. Give us the platform. Give us a space. So let's share what we have. Let's teach them. So Melanie, for the question you say that how can we, our neighborhood more inviting family of color, I would like to go back to that question. I would say that honesty is the solution. First of all, why are we here today? Is that because we want to stop this uncomfortable feeling? Or is it really because we believe that there is a change to be done? I am here because we all are here because not because we are uncomfortable, but we want to change something. And so how do we change that one? Once we acknowledge that there is things to be changed, that we all are genuinely want that change, then we go to that. Then ask the people, like in a situation where they feel racism, let them lead, because they know exactly where the pain is. When you go to a store to buy a shoes, you try the shoes and you change it because you feel the pain, where exactly feel the pain. You know what I mean? You change the shoes. You are the one who knows how to change. And give us a platform, give us the way how to participate. Because when I teach, I don't teach only my son. When my kids' friends comes home, I teach them too. I teach them the same time. I teach them every single day. I go to school every time to my school's kids, because there are kids, very nice family, but their kids, they say a word, nigger, to my son. I heard Mingus earlier. And that is because I know the parents are such a kind people, such a nice people. I waited for the child to come to my house to teach him, to correct him. So that is what I'm saying. I am here today. I'm sorry to interrupt, to take time. I just want to appeal to each one of you to help this dream I had for so many years. Help me to build a club. So I went to downtown, every place, and knocking the door of the church, the universities, the schools, to give me a space, just a little space. So all community, all people come. And the age difference, young, adults, all kind of people from different races and different ability, diversity, people come there and use our skill to share. Don't make profit from the tragedies. Always we try a way to find making profits from problems, like from racism. They want to make speech and to charge for that. They shouldn't be that way. They should be free. I'm sorry I take so much of my time.
Okay, first of all, Martha, you did not interrupt.
I'm sorry, yes.
Much time. You answered exactly in the way that we were looking for. Let me just clarify one thing. I think Swirl will want to follow up with you at some point about maybe putting together one of these community groups. But for right now, at the beginning of your talk, you said one thing that broke your heart was that you go to these places, these schools, and talk to them about Africa, and people have no idea. So are you saying, in terms of taking action, that one thing we can do is teach our children, not just about where we may have come from, but from people of all the world?
Absolutely, Melanie, absolutely. That is the reason, because I taught them about that, is because that's where I'm from. And I want to give the right information, what I know. And so, but when we have that community center, we have so many people from different parts of the world, they take turn to teach what they know, and that's what I'm trying to say. We all have different roles, different expertise. We want to share that without charging people. That is why it's called community. We don't have to charge for it. We don't have to make money out of problems all the time. So that is why I said community center, but we need a space for that.
Thank you, Martha. I want to go back now to Kevin. Kevin, I know because of time, I'm leaping on these questions a little bit. So like Martha, no problem if you head backwards. But there's a question here that really relates to what you were talking about. And that is, what's the best thing to do if we're with a Black friend or colleague and someone hurls a racial slur at them?
That's tough, and because that question is interesting to me, Martha, or I'm sorry, Melanie, because of this. What do you do with them? If you are committed to living that life that says that all lives in your circle are important to you, not the all lives matter comment, but that those lives inside of your circle are really important to you, then it's a little bit bigger question than what that question is. And that is, if those people in your circle are important to you and you have an African American and a Native American or Hispanic or whatever that is, whatever that person of color is, and you're in a group and someone in that group tells an off-color joke where the punchline is that person of color, what do you do then? Do you say to that person who told the joke, wow, you know what, do you really believe that? I mean, or do you say, you know what, that makes me kind of uncomfortable when you tell a joke like that. And so when you take it to the other side, I'll give you an example. I've been out riding my bicycle with friends and I've had people throw something at me because I was either in front or in back. And basically all my friends have done is kind of ridden up around me like a cocoon. Sometimes without even saying anything. You know what I mean? But they're so connected to who I am and what's important in my life and how important I am in their life that immediately they kind of do what I do. They do what my dad taught our family to do, and that is, you know, you kind of protect those that are around you. Now, does that mean that, you know, you turn to the person that yelled that name and you call them back a name? No, that is not what that means at all. But it does mean immediately you have to have the big E, and that's empathy. You have to be empathetic to those that are not like you in whatever form they're not like you. And in this conversation, obviously, we're talking about race. But you have to be empathetic and just understand. And even if it's something as simple as saying, a genuine, you know, I'm really sorry that happened. But the thing you don't want to say is, oh, I can't believe that happened. That, to me, that's one of the worst things that a white person can say to a person of any color or any nationality is, oh, I can't believe that happened. That's never a comforting thing to hear. You just want to say, you know what, I'm really sorry that happened. I really am sorry that it happened. And if you want to talk about it, that's great. If you don't, I understand that too. But just know, I'm on your team, and I'm really sorry. It hurts me to hear that said.
That brings us to a follow-up.
Can I jump in on that one?
I was just going to call on you, Mingus.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, great. I want to underscore everything that Kevin said right there. I agree. Supporting the person who has been attacked in a way that feels appropriate to them is always the appropriate thing to do. I also want to point out and point to a variation on that scenario, which I think is equally, if not more important. And that is, what do you do as a white person when you hear a fellow white person say something racist when there's not a black person in the room? And you know, and here's just a favor I'm going to ask of you from me is, when you hear that, I really need you to intervene and let that person know
Absolutely.
that that was inappropriate. And I know Kevin knows this. I may not be obvious, you know, depending on what your life experience is, but you know, I think that's how you actually begin to interrupt racism, is to let people know that there is no safe harbor for that, even if no one's opinions or feelings were hurt in the room and it was just a joke. One of the things that we need to do as a community and as friends and neighbors is to make it clear that even when no one's looking, racism is not okay.
Mingus, that
Yeah.
was a wonderful answer, and you now get the follow-up question.
Okay.
Because one of our questions here is really related to that. What do Caucasians say or do that is inadvertently hurtful? Kay Ray just gave us an example of, I can't believe that. They write, I want to know what we don't intend to be mean, offensive, prejudiced, but is perceived as mean, offensive, or prejudiced.
Sure, and I suspect everyone will have different sensitivities here. Here's the thing that I think is really important, that Portland needs to do better at, and America needs to do better at. I think we can congratulate ourselves tonight because we're doing exactly the right thing, which is to make space for and listen to people of color. Before, there's a reason why I started with the stat that only 2.5% of Portlanders are Black men. So in practice, there's a lot of conversations about what it's like to be Black, but often, especially in the context of Portland, there's not a lot of actually listening to people of color. And so, one of the things that, I think good allies and good friends do is that they take time to listen and to hear. That's why events like tonight are so important. And that's why I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and participating in discussions like these. And I think it's important to continue to have them. And I think it's also important to recognize that every Black person is different. My experience is obviously different from Martha's experience. It's different from Kevin's experience, although there's definitely through lines that connect all of us. And I can't tell you how impressed and moved I am by their stories. And I hope that we can all just make space to hear each other's stories, because everyone's stories matter, regardless of what your color of your skin is.
I feel terrible to say that we're down to our last 10 minutes. I hate this because I'm loving the conversation. And there are two final questions that I absolutely want to ask, and I want to hear from all of you.
Okay.
So I'll stick with you, Mingus, because you're in the screen right now. The first one is very timely.
Okay.
How do we separate the Black Lives Matter issue from the riots and vandalism going on in Portland right now and move forward as a community positively?
Sure. Well, you might get different answers. Speaking of differences, I don't want to put words in Martha's mouth or Kevin's mouth, but I'll tell you my perspective on this. Burning a building or smashing a window does not make me or my kids any freer or any safer. Indeed, the politics of violence is what ultimately will come and swallow up and injure people of color. One of the things that happens is when you throw a punch downtown in the midst of a political conflict, what's going to happen is, 3 months from now, when I'm walking down the street at night and the Proud Boys are in town looking for trouble,
yes.
I'm going to be the guy who gets punched.
Yes.
And the only way to short circuit that dynamic is for us to, as a city and a society, to reject violence. Frankly, this is something which is a little bit different than I expected. One of the things that is missing from this moment is a commitment to nonviolence. I think there's a reason why Martin Luther King practiced the politics of nonviolence. You can do anti-racism, but anti-racism without the anti-violence plank is an incomplete solution. So that's what I think. But I also know that people who look like me also sometimes disagree with that perspective.
Martha or Kevin, do you want to add anything?
Kevin, you can go ahead.
Okay. I would just ask that everyone understand that there is a difference between protesters and rioters. There's a definitive definition between those two people, and I would just speak on the many nights that I was downtown protesting, and by protesting I mean in a group of 3,000 to 5,000 people, and literally you're just walking down the street, and it's people of every stripe, every age. And it's peaceful, and it's loving, and it's supportive. And then what it has dwindled down to, which is kind of a show of machismo, I think, by some people who don't have anything better to do than to break things. And it's unfortunately, I also believe that the Black Lives Matter message is being lost, is being just flatly lost by what's going on. In my other life, I'm a photographer, and I have been around some protest. For 30 years, I've shot protest, and I have never feared for myself shooting a protest. And when I say shooting, I'm meaning with a camera, shooting a protest, and I mean in major cities, New York, Chicago, LA, so on and so forth. And I can tell you that a month ago, I was downtown, right at kind of the beginning maybe of the federal building happening, and I was shooting downtown. And I had 2 people walk by me and threaten me, and not because of my color, but just say to me, "You better not." They walked really close to me, and I wondered why they were coming my way, but it's no big deal. And they just said to me as they walked by, "You had better not take any photographs down here." Now I went to school for photography. I've had a camera in front of my face for years and years and years and years and years and years, and I have never experienced that. Now, I had just shot for almost a month, probably, the protest marches from the East Side and everything else. So I just want people that are on here right now, the 50 or 60 that are here, to understand there's a difference between rioters and protesters, and what's happening and what has happened in the last few weeks. We all know those people were not protesting for Black Lives Matter. They don't speak for Black Lives Matter. They don't speak for me, that's for sure. I doubt if they speak for Martha. I'd have to believe they don't speak for Mingus. They don't speak for 99.9% of the Black people in the United States. When you speak the words of Martin Luther King, that's when you're speaking for the masses of people of color in the United States. And that is a nonviolent message that will win. It will win. It will win.
Well, let's finish up with you, and I'll have each of you speak on our final question. Martha has to an extent answered this one already, but I'd like to hear what you feel is one important action or change you would like to see realized.
In our neighborhood, Melanie, in the Southwest Hills, is it, you want me to answer it? Or?
You can answer it any way you want.
Okay. I would just say, I'm just going to go back to my childhood. I've already said it, I think, twice or three times. Just please treat everyone the way you want to be treated, and teach your kids that, because kids learn from their parents. And when I was in the 4th grade and I was called a nigger, that little boy did not conjure up that word on his own. He heard that from his parents. And if we as adults treat everyone that we come in contact with, and I don't care if it's the person at the Starbucks drive-through window, if you just treat that person the way you want to be treated, it will then filter down to when you run into that Black person, you're going to treat them the way that you expect to be treated. And your children are going to see that. And they're going to say, well, my mom did it that way, so that must be the right, or my dad did it that way, or my aunt did it that way. So what I would just like to see people do is just go back to that thing of, what do you do when somebody moves into your neighborhood? You treat them the way you want to be treated. And don't forget that empathy is kind of a lost art. And we need to bring that art back in a big way. We really need to bring the big E, that empathy, back into our lives. And thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you being here and listening to me and us talk.
And Mingus, what one important action or change would you like to see realized?
I want to see this conversation that we're having today continue. This is how communities come together. This is how communities heal. I know it takes a lot of courage to participate in this discussion, and I recognize pieces of it have been uncomfortable, but there's also a lot to celebrate here. You know, I'm just kind of looking at 2 people, and maybe 3 if I include myself, who really have, I think, lived the American dream. And one of the reasons why we have been able to accomplish what we've accomplished is because we live in communities that have embraced us and wish the best for us. And I think all 3 of us have probably also returned that love. So let's keep this conversation going. Let's continue to support each other and have hope. I know it can seem dark right now, but let me tell you, the world that I was a young person in is very different from the world that my kids are growing up in. And I think it's a better world. And in 10 years, maybe 20, my kids will be on whatever hologram version of Zoom calls that we have, zooming into a neighborhood association meeting. And there'll be new challenges there, but I hope that a lot of the issues that we're talking about today will be in the history books, and they will be if we listen to each other, work together, and come to the table with open hearts.
Let's finish with you, Martha. You've talked a little bit already about what actions you want to see. Can you just finish in just the last minute saying, if you have a request, what are you asking the people on this panel, in this whole room, what are you asking them?
Melanie, I first thank you so much for each and all of you guys to be here today. And so We're not the teachers here, and you are not the problem makers here. I just want you to repeat that. The reason we are here today is because we are a team players. I believe in team. I love sport, and I believe in team sport, in teamwork. This is a sport, a teamwork. We cannot do it alone. We need each other. I said, let's focus on things we can change, because we cannot change. I cannot change my skin color, but let's focus on things that we can change. And also, Melanie, on the question you said about the violence, because I teach my kids not to do violence, stay away violence, and I have to act that way for the sake of my children. You know, I cannot promote violence because I teach something, against violence. And also, I think it is so important to tell the truth who is doing the violence. So as I said, as an ally, what we need is people who make sure, take picture, like Kevin said, take picture, take videos, who is doing what. We need publicity. We need to make sure that exactly who is doing what, so we can tell the difference. And we need that on a daily basis. We need publicity to show to the world that it's not the Black Matter movement what is doing, but it is the other one. We need that publicity all the time to show that. But the thing that I am here today, when Melanie asked me to be on the panel, I asked her, Melanie, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of speaking. I want action. And I'm here today because to appeal to you guys. Let's make something a change. We gotta stop talking. Let's make a difference. And let's come together and help us, let's build this community center. Let's come, our kids come there. Let's know each other. The racism is not knowing each other. We don't know each other. That's a problem. If you know me, you care about me. You don't know about me. That's why racism is. We gotta come together and know each other. When we spend time together, when I see your struggle, when I feel your pain closely, you start caring about me. We gotta change that. We gotta change for the sake of our children. I care about each one of you guys. I'm not here representing, something that I can change. I'm representing here humanity. I'm why here today. But help us. Let's build this community center. Community center is important. We are human. We need a place to interact. We need a place to change things, to unlearn what we learn by seeing action. We have to unlearn what we learn by seeing me closely, who I am. You have to see me through me. The reason I told you all about my family, how I came through, is because you understand who I am. You can see it through me, who I am. It's not only about me, about Kevin, about Mingus, about our children, about you. I would love to know about your history. We gotta sit down together. Let's have some coffee. Let's talk. Let's be open. Let's solve the problem. We stop talking. We stop talking. I'm tired of talking. I love you guys so much, beyond words. And thank you. Stay safe.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think we've been blessed here at Swirl and those other neighbors who have joined us to have three such compassionate, honest people talk to us tonight. I think we're all stronger for it. And once again, I want to thank all of you for coming. And if you unmute yourself, just a big round of applause.
Yes.
Thanks and good night.